Chris is the founder and co-founder and CEO of Wyver, a company that is transforming imagery by using hyperspectral satellites using a very, very fantastic technology. We have Moji on the left corner there. He is the founder of Cemvita, which is a biotech company and is using synthetic biology to decarbonize heavy industries to change so many other verticals that we're going to be discussing. You have Carol, who is the Chief Financial Officer and the Chief Administrative Officer of Lonestar, a company that is building data storage capabilities and edge processing on the moon. Finally, we have Denis Tudor, co-founder and CEO of Swisspod. Swisspod is a Hyperloop company, and I'm curious, like, why Hyperloop company is here in a panel about space technologies. What you can tell is that a lot of solutions that you're going to be seeing in extreme conditions for Hyperloop are going to be applicable in different contexts, including space sector. We wanted to organize this panel to talk about what they're doing, but most exciting part is to understand why they're doing this. Right? And this is something that everyone can connect. The challenge that they're facing are insurmountable in many ways. Space is hard, at least that's perception, but still they persist. So let me start with Chris here. Chris, why did you decide to tackle the problem that you're addressing? And why don't you tell us a little bit about Wyvern?
Okay, so what we do at Wyvern is we measure chemistry. We measure chemistry from space using hyperspectral sensors. You can use these for a variety of you can use this for a variety of things. For example, if you ever wanted to figure out where methane was leaking, like let's say you've got a house and it's got a natural gas pipeline hookup, with our satellites you can figure out exactly that it's leaking from your house, and you can also tell how much it is. Or if you wanted to say prospect for diamonds, or figure out, there's a lot of wildfires where I'm from in Canada right now. So if you wanted to build a fuel map of the entire forest and use that to figure out where to position wildfires ahead of a fire starting, you can do that too. That's actually something we're talking about with the Alberta government right now. Anyway, the biggest reason why, last thing, the thing that differentiates us from other imagery companies out there is that we're also working on another technology called deployable optics. It's a lot like the James Webb Space Telescope. We take a really big telescope, fold it up into a small size, unfold it in space, and then we do this really crazy thing that much smarter people than I actually work on, since I do most of the talking and meeting people. But we take a mirror and we move it in 6 degrees of freedom on the micron scale, and we align a whole bunch of mirrors so that we can get a really big aperture. By doing that, we can launch a satellite for about $5 million that would have normally cost about $750 million and achieve higher performance, higher resolution. Anyway, that's what we're working on. The reason I decided to do this is there's a couple of things. First off, I'm from Alberta. Alberta is, if you know anything about it, it's that place where the tar sands are and where there's a whole bunch of cows and there's lots of trees. If you're a young professional in Alberta that doesn't want to work in one of those industries, you don't really have much of a choice except to move somewhere else. I really wanted to build a space industry in Alberta. So me and my co-founders, Kristen, Callie, and Curtis, we actually built our province's first satellite as students, because we said to ourselves, hey, if we teach ourselves how to do it, maybe we can also build an industry. And then after that, we started Wyvern. The second reason is because between building that satellite and starting Wyvern, we also started to see a lot of the impacts of climate change in our home province. Glaciers melting, forest fires, and we were trying to figure out if we could do something good for Earth from space. And hyperspectral imagery and this awesome technology connected allowed us to do that. It allowed us to see essentially the DNA of Earth's climate on a global scale. And that's why we decided to do it. We said, hey, if we're going to do something with our lives, let's try to help Earth out. Anyway, that's us.
Thanks, Chris. So, Carol, you had a very successful career in Wall Street. You've seen different parts of the financial sector. Now you are with a lunar company. So it's I think everybody's curious about why you're doing this and why you decided to get involved with a company that, by the way, as some of you might know, was part of the Intuitive Machines' first private lunar mission in history a couple of months ago. Lonestar played an integral part of that mission, and we're just excited to hear. Maybe did you get involved in space because we were bored with the Wall Street, and then you think that this is more exciting?
Well, first of all, I want to say that you have it here. Well, first of all, we start with the moon, but Lone Star is really about data security, and the moon is really a means to get there. So it's a way of saying I met Chris Stott at International Space University many moons ago when we were in the early days of satellite finance. And we bonded over the idea that a lot of customer needs could be met through satellite. And we really spoke about how so much of the economy really went through the space, and yes, it's all about the economy. You totally summed it up right. And so as we looked at the space economy then, we were looking at multiple uses for space technologies, for satellites. And we always said it's really got to be driven by the customer. So fast forward many years, I'm no longer on Wall Street, and Chris and I were looking at customer needs. And we were looking at, isn't it now time with reduced cost of accessing space and all the computer technology and all the technological innovation, isn't it the right time to be looking at data security in space? And so it was the right time technology-wise and cost structure-wise, but it was all designed around a customer need. And I think that's really what really drew me to this. The question is timing. You know, I've seen a lot of space ventures and spent a lot of time in the satellite market when it was owned by governments, and we've seen lots of business plans come and go, but this really attracted to me because it was driven by a customer need, but also a timing was right because the technology was right, the cost structure was right. And, you know, as you said, we were fortunate enough to hitch a ride on the Intuitive Machines mission. So we were able to do the data test and be able to transmit on the way to the moon the Declaration of Independence. So it was the CLIPS program that made the timing right. When we say, why was the timing right? It wasn't just the cost structure, but the focus now on the moon allowed us to really do the type of technology testing we need. And hopefully Sidney will join us again when we do our next mission in November when we're taking a data center to the moon. So I'm pretty excited, but I think we're in a good space.
Thanks, Sarah. So Denis, you met Elon Musk when you won the Hyperloop X Prize competition, right? More than once, in fact. You met Richard Branson in Necker Island recently, more than once, in fact, because of your work with Hyperloop. What did you learn through those interactions that's helping you become a better entrepreneur? And what motivates you to work on Hyperloop, given that that's such a groundbreaking solution that we all want to see taking place?
Can you hear me? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so it's fun to meet them. So I think both of them are pretty fun. With Elon, we met first time in January 2016 when we won the design award, and then actually I've been part of the team. I was leading a team that won the innovation award, and then the best system engineering award back in 2018. So we had a lot of discussions, great discussions with Elon. I think that's how we got started the company after this adventure at the SpaceX Hyperpod competition. Regarding Richard Branson, I think he was one of our competitors in the past. He's not anymore. So, the idea is that our technology, we're a company nowadays that is not really a Hyperloop company. We're a tech company, I would say, with our first product in Hyperloop. However, our technology could be definitely applied to the space sector. So I give you one example about our unique propulsion system that could actually propel like small satellites, like from ground to from Earth to the space. It's pretty exciting. Now we're building like a new testing. We just set like 2 weeks ago a new record worldwide, like for the longest Hyperloop mission that ever happened. And now we're currently working with with US Army in Colorado to build like the largest Hyperloop testing facility in the world. And I think that's pretty exciting. I think it's really exciting to think that people could travel at the speed of, let's say, close to the speed of sound in vacuum tubes, which means like energy efficiently, more sustainable, more ethical. And it's pretty fun to imagine how they'll go as fast as a plane and maybe as convenient as a train. So yeah.
All right. So I first met Moji in a pitching competition that was organized by Steve Wolf, my friend Steve Wolf here, and Spacecom. So they didn't win, and Steve Wolf was still criticizing me for making the wrong decision. Yeah. In fact, we made the wrong decision because Cemvita was the strongest competitor, and now we can see that why. The idea that they pitched at an event was how to produce food on Mars. Right? It couldn't be more ambitious and audacious. Well, we figure out that over time, this company managed to develop technology that using synthetic biology that transforming our world to fast forward. Cemvita is probably the most successful company in Seldor Capital's portfolio. It's just going through Series C, just kicking off Series C right now. It is going to be our first unicorn. And we are very privileged to have Moji here, who has been the co-founder of the company since the beginning, and with his sister, in fact. Moji, how do you, as a CEO, bring that vision of producing food on Mars to be able to create sustainable impact in our planet?
Yeah, glad to be here. And I would say we won because we met you, and from that advisory role to Seldor, and being here is really special. So thanks for all the help and the team. You know, what happened was, if anyone has done any startup in a space, a really common advice is find an application on Earth. Don't think that the space, unless if you're in satellites or rockets, maybe. Otherwise, find an application on Earth. So we took that by heart and really explored in what other ways can we use this in situ resource utilization, which turns out really is the same concept of circular systems and sustainability. That's like the actual way of doing it. So when we talk about energy transition and all of this, is just the same concept. So because we're in Houston, my background in energy industry, we kind of explored that area, and that coincided with you know, this wave of energy transition coming through from 2017 and led to massive transformation of the energy industry. So it happened to be kind of lucky, I would say, that the timing worked out and it just took off, got a life of its own, and then we just kind of pursued it. I think there is a bit of a founders like to kind of in some way make up stories about how they have this brilliant idea and that seed just grew in the, but the reality is you go through revisions and you pursue what is working, what is not working. We did the same thing. So we had the idea of how to use CO2 as a feedstock. The first application was in space. And then we realized that really the bigger help is addressing climate change. So if this CO2 is a problem, how could we use that as a feedstock and turn it into other valuable products? But the bigger picture that we've kind of now internalized is really thinking about future of natural resources and changing our mindset from, you know, today we have oil and gas companies and mining companies, but really they should be thinking of themselves as natural resource companies because they have this interaction with nature. That's where they get their feedstock. But the relationship is quite one-sided right now, and it should be regenerative. And how do you do that? Well, how about we learn from nature? Because that's already happening in nature. And, you know, biotech and synthetic biology is our way of learning from nature, but then optimizing, engineering, and scaling up solutions that could also be economical. And so we're making a big bet on synthetic biology on one hand as the tech, but then applying it to, you know, climate tech or energy transition. And my hope is that we could get back to space as the company kind of matures. And we've talked about that. There's some really exciting applications, especially once we go to Mars, because 96% of the air is already CO2, so you don't even have to really do capture. It's just readily available, and you could turn that into intermediates that could be used to make all kind of end products, and that's the ultimate ISRU dream, I would say.
Perfect. So an open question for the panel, and feel free to grab the mic. Doing a startup, being an entrepreneur is hard. Being the founder of a deep tech company is exponentially more challenging. So when you come across something that seems to be so difficult, so unsurmountable, and you have to push through, can you share some of the strategies that you've adopted that some of our startups could also use it in their own struggles?
So one of them is more of a mindset. My late father, he grew up in all the Son Sotheby survivors, and so one of them is just, it's a mindset that he taught the rest of us, which was, no matter how hard it was, you just keep on grinding it out every day until you win, and that helps a lot, but it also isn't very pleasant. So the other strategy that I highly recommend is making sure you believe in what you're doing, because that's the thing that'll get you out of bed in the morning. If you're doing something that you think is going to be valuable and that it's going to, whether you're driven by, saving the earth or financial rewards, or maybe you just really want to make the very best, let's say artificial meat, whatever. Anyway, the point is that whatever you're driven by, really believing in it. To be very so I guess a third thing to be incredibly tactical is one of the things that I always, if I ever get to a point where like there's just too many things going on and I need to figure out what to do next, and maybe it's a little bit too insurmountable, I sort of pull myself back entirely and I just focus on doing one thing, and usually that thing is organizing something, one small task, one slight thing to build my momentum. I don't think that there's a good strategy that is global for everybody, though. I think everybody's going to have their own individual strategies that are going to help. If there's anything that would be the most important thing, it would be to spend some time getting to know what really, really works for you and your brain.
Oh, so maybe resilience. I think it's in my view, like the largest thing. So I mean, I remember when I started the Hyperloop industry back in 9 years ago, when I qualified for the final of the competition, and I called my mother. I was like so excited. I said, "Hey, mom, I'm going to College Station to be part of this final." And then she asked me like, "Do you have money to go?" And I think that was the first moment when I started with the resilience. So probably if I had to listen all investors or all the 95% investors that I met and didn't invest in the company, I would have given up. And I think resilience and consistency, continuity, I think is the word. So yeah.
So I think another way of saying this is like just a very high tolerance to pain for anyone who's done this. But I think of it in terms of it's like pressure and motivation. What helps me is I just think about how many people have trusted us, they've invested in us, people that I have convinced to join us, left really good jobs, and joined this mission. So at times where something's not going right, or you just have to dig in really to push through, I just think about that pressure. So that helps me. I know different people have different approaches. The other one on motivation is, I know that they say it's a good mindset is to think about proving people right. Like if you make you guys 100x return on your investment, that's great, right? But I get more motivation to prove people wrong. Those who passed, those who said no, like early on, it just I don't know, just naturally it just works better for me. So every no feeds more energy, to just keep going and prove people wrong as throughout time. Because it's inevitable that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs because you're doing something new. And maybe if I could throw out one more kind of maybe a bit of a counterintuitive, there was a conversation around really the importance of understanding the customer and optimizing. My experience has been that, big companies are designed to be risk averse. So if you want to really optimize around what problem you could solve for them and be limited to that, you end up with quite just incremental solutions. And that's fine. There's a huge market for that. But I think our job as entrepreneurs is also to take a step back and think bigger and throw things out there that is just insane and crazy at times, right? But working with the right companies to say, okay, how do we combine our best in terms of this big idea and the expertise of the big company in executing and actually pursuing it, like to take the shot, not to dilute it down to what is more safe now to pursue. So I think there's a sweet spot there, of course, but I think there's definitely the customer focus. I feel it's a bit overrated because of all the lean startup methodology kind of mindset the past 10 or so years.
And before we hear from Carol, now I understand why practicing mixed martial arts has helped you become a better entrepreneur on the pain tolerance side. So, Carol.
I started out as a tax lawyer, I know, before I went to Wall Street, and tax lawyers are always attracted to a challenge. And you have to look at every day like a problem-solving challenge. People throw things at you every day, can't do this, can't do that. And you have to just smile and really say to yourself, yes, that's a challenge. Thank you for presenting this challenge to me. I think Moji just said you have to evolve. And so essentially you need to take the challenge and realize that it's every day you're not going to wake up and succeed. Everybody isn't going to like you. Everyone's not going to like your business plan. And you really just need to be in continuous problem-solving mode. You need to look at things creatively and you sort of optimize, but you may start out in one place and end up place completely different. And you need to be willing, if you really do run into something that's an issue, you need to be willing to pivot and to really work with the facts. And as long as you keep that problem-solving mentality, like you don't have all the answers, no one has all the answers. If we had an answer, then this wouldn't be a startup. If it was so obvious, the whole idea of a startup is to try things that haven't been tried and see things a different way. So I think that's what keeps me motivated. Maybe it's proving people wrong, but it's also this idea that problems are meant to be solved and there is a solution. You just really need to be open to finding it.
Right. So another open question here. Can you share with our founders something that worked out for you when you're pitching investors and you figure out that, okay, this seems to be effective?
So when we were first starting, we spent a ton of time working on the pitch deck, and when I say that, I mean like we would be tweaking everything, like where something was, whether something was aligned, the color, all this stuff. And this was very early days of Wyver, and I was still just a young engineer. And we went to this pitch competition, and this guy gets up on stage and he's reading from cards, and he's presenting a presentation that looked not nearly as polished as ours. And I was thinking, oh, we're gonna win this. Like, I've memorized the whole thing, I practiced it, our presentation is gorgeous. And then he got to the point where he's like, yeah, we're doing $1 million in ARR right now. And it was like you could hear a pin drop. And that's the moment I realized that the actual design, and it's a stupid thing when I think back on it, because as an engineer, I was like, oh yeah, like this is what they taught us in school. You have to be a good presenter. But the thing that mattered the most was the content and the fact that we needed to become investable. He was investable because he had $1 million in ARR. He won the competition because that's the thing that mattered. And I didn't think about that at the time. You're going to get a lot of people that are going to tell you that, spend all the time on your pitch deck, and like, yeah, sure, spend some time on your pitch deck, but it's the content behind it that really matters. It's the thing that's going to make you investable. It's being able to show that you've got customer contracts, or you're generating revenue, or you've got some traction. So that's my advice for the founders. Yeah.
Well, I guess going back to your Star Trek point, you're going to be pitching to people who don't like Star Trek. And as unbelievable as that may be, sometimes you're pitching to people who don't know the US hasn't been back to the moon. Sometimes you're pitching to someone who is not familiar with your industry. And you really need to understand that right away. I don't mean to dumb it down for the investor base, but you have this passion. We're all just brimming with enthusiasm for our business. But you may be speaking to someone and you don't want to make the investor look foolish, right? You need to really bring the investor in. They may know this, but you may not be speaking in their language. And so I think that you shouldn't assume that the investor is where you are in terms of getting back to the moon. I mean, we end up every board meeting, we're going to the moon, we're all so excited, right? But not everybody is jazzed by that. And I think you really need to find where the investor is jazzed. If it's seeing a big number, if it's seeing a customer contract, conversation over, hey, we just signed a big contract. Okay, that's great. And I think you have to find out where that point is, and you can't assume that people share your passion.
So we built like two different hybrid infrastructures, one in Switzerland, one in the US, and that involved a lot of like hard work, and I mean, we really built something new. So we had to get approvals to create new infrastructures that they're not existing before, no regulations, like nothing. So, but still, people had to, like accept our construction, and that required a lot of work and a lot of stress. And I think one thing that worked on my pitch was that if I was kind of in a positive mood, and if all those internal operations that are really tough, like a roller coaster each day for us, are not affecting me, and I'm able to articulate the value we create, I think it's kind of like it worked. Also, I mean, some statistics on our side, we've got like more than 30 private investors. So I think more than 50% of investors that visited one of our sites, either in Switzerland or US, invested. And it's almost 0% when I send a deck like an intro or something. So it never worked that for me. So I think it's more like people to see the capsule moving. I mean, we just set this new worldwide record on the longest Hyperloop mission. So people are excited about this progress, are excited about this revolutionary technology that, will change the way people are going to travel in the future. So I think that's something that it always worked. And more than, the potential we have now with the Indian government or in Colorado, or so I think it's still the resilience and still like letting people see what the real progress is. So yeah.
So real quick, I think the one kind of intangible one is to establish kind of a peer-to-peer relationship, because investors are looking for good companies as much as good companies are looking for good investors. So not having this kind of a, like they say, you can need and lead at the same time. So if you're really needy, you're just kind of that just doesn't exude the confidence. The other part, when it happens, is beautiful. Is that I've been in rooms where investors, it's like, you don't have to convince us why synthetic biology is going to play a role in energy. We know that. We've done our homework. We know what areas we're watching and why. We just want to know, why are you guys the best team? Like, why should we bet on your team in that mix? So when that happens, that's beautiful, but it requires the type of investors who have the bandwidth to do their own research and formulate what areas they're looking in, as opposed to there's other investors who's like, okay, tell me what you guys do, and there's a bit of education, and that's fine too. But when I look at the investor mix that we have now, some of the ones that really led to fruitful relationships are the ones that we didn't need to convince them. It was more about why Cemvita.
Perfect. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. The founders are going to be here throughout the event, and hope you have the chance to ask direct questions to each one of them and to other founders that are also not part of the panel, but are here to talk to you.